The most disturbing thing about scientists is that they cannot understand the shape, the form, which the answer to existence must possess. They cannot understand the inherent properties of answers as opposed to non-answers. This problem arises because they are sensing types, not thinking types. They are perceiving types, not judging types. Here are various explanations provided by science which cannot possibly constitute answers to anything. Things happen randomly. This could be replaced by the statement things happen miraculously. The random and miraculous alike happen without sufficient reasons, without explanations. They just happen, because scientists require them to happen. Scientists require the spacetime universe to randomly come from non-existence because if it came from an existence that it is not material and not in space and time, then that would constitute the immediate falsification of science. The scientific paradigm would be unable to address it since it stands outside that paradigm, which is all about space, time and matter. So, scientists would rather defend their paradigm, come what may, than seek the truth, if the truth is not compatible with their paradigm, which it isn't. This therefore constitutes a blind religious faith in scientism. Scientists love randomness because it gets things started for them without reference to any level deeper than science. Scientists are intellectually dishonest. They don't seek actual answers. They seek whatever is least costly to their paradigm, just like religious believers. Science's paradigm cannot explain itself. The scientific universe cannot originate itself, and this automatically means that a deeper, self-explaining paradigm is required, but science cannot accept a more fundamental paradigm, something that goes beyond science, something metaphysical, and so, to avoid this, it invokes randomness. Randomness should be regarded as the foundational non-explanation that science uses to give itself a pseudo-explanation, to get itself started. Scientists have no intellectual integrity. They accept non-explanations as explanations if those non-explanations allow them to go on believing in their paradigm. To any intellectual, randomness, miracle, should never be invoked. It should be absolutely avoided. It literally means you have no idea what you are talking about if you ever refer to randomness. Randomness creates an immediate, fatal, Cartesian substance dualism, with its intractable interaction problem. How can reality involve random things and non-random things? How can the random interact with the non-random? What is the ontology of the random and the ontology of the non-random? How can the non-random have its own ontology if it is generated by the random? How can the random create anything other than more randomness, more of itself? What is the epistemology of randomness? What is the epistemology of non-randomness? How can these two opposite epistemologies coexist? How can randomness create order, the exact opposite of randomness? How can space, time and matter originate in randomness? To see how ridiculous the invocation of randomness is, the word random should simply be replaced by the word miracle, another thing that has no rational explanation, no sufficient reason, other than what the miracle requires the outcome to be. How does the miraculous produce the non-miraculous? How does the miraculous interact with the non-miraculous? What is the ontology of the miraculous as opposed to the ontology of the non-miraculous? What is the epistemology of the miraculous as opposed to the epistemology of the non-miraculous? Science cannot answer any of these things. It wouldn't even know where to begin. Even worse, it's not interested. It dismisses it all as philosophy, i.e., it regards the integrity, the coherence, of answers, as irrelevant to the scientific project. Scientists spend all of their time trying to create theories that match observations, that's how you win your Nobel Prize, and no time at all considering whether their theories are intellectually coherent. Coherence forms no part of scientific thinking. Science is all about correspondence and pragmatism. The invocation of randomness is a pragmatic tactic used by scientists to get their science started without making any reference to any order of existence that contradicts science. Randomness is the absence of order. It's chaos. It's hardly scientific, but science has nevertheless wedded itself to it. Scientists are faced with a choice: underpin science with a deeper, non-scientific order, and thus demonstrate that science is not the truth, or underpin science with the absence of order, randomness, chaos, miracle, and then ignore this system of chaos once it has generated the universe you ideologically and pragmatically require it to generate. Science paradigmatically preferred the latter option. As Rupert Sheldrake so tellingly said, modern science is based on the principle, give us one free miracle and we'll explain the rest. The one free miracle is the appearance of all the mass and energy in the universe and all the laws that govern it in a single instant from nothing. Science is perfectly happy with this. It loves its originating miracle, which, once invoked, never needs to be referenced again. How convenient. What are the alternatives to science's miracle? They are 1. Metaphysics, the philosophical explanation of existence; 2. God, the religious explanation of existence; 3. Cosmic consciousness, bare awareness, non-dualism, the oneness, the spiritual explanation of existence; 4. Ontological mathematics, the rationalist explanation of existence. All of these place something more fundamental under science, and science can't bear that. The only thing that can get science going, without being more fundamental than science, is random miracle, and so that's exactly what science opts for. Sad. Science, as a system of faith, refuses to accept that anything could be more foundational than science, whether philosophy, religion, spirituality or mathematics, since any such foundation would falsify science as the best way to explain reality, and that's something scientists will never countenance. Scientists accept randomness as a means to get science started, without referring to a rival, more foundational system of order, yet avoid all of the issues this raises. They are in effect saying that randomness, chaos, miracle, is more foundational than science, since it produces science but science does not explain it, yet they refuse to give any ontology, epistemology, sufficient reason, or explanation for why randomness should be foundational or why it should even exist, or how it can exist since it's the total absence of order, law, intelligibility, explanation. Scientists don't care about any of that. They are supremely anti-intellectual, with no intellectual honesty or integrity at all. No one genuinely interested in explaining existence would ever invoke non-explanation as an explanation, yet that's exactly what scientists do, over and over again. Remember, science is committed to denying that anything is more foundational than science. Science tacitly admits that randomness is more foundational than science, but it then makes no attempt whatsoever to explain randomness, it just is. It sees randomness as the least costly way of adding something to science to serve as the initiator of science, since it cannot initiate itself. Only an eternal and necessary order can rationally initiate temporal and contingent processes, but an eternal and necessary order is no good to science because it's a non-scientific order. Science, to avoid invoking something more fundamental than science, needs to generate itself from no prior order, i.e., it needs to randomly generate itself. That is its ideological preference. Science will never refer to God, religion, spirituality, cosmic consciousness, metaphysics, philosophy, or ontological mathematics, rationalism, as the true ground and initiator of science. All non-scientific initiators of science are eternal and necessary. This is true of God, cosmic consciousness, metaphysics and ontological mathematics. It's even true of any hypothetical randomness. If randomness is true at any point, it is true forever, and random universes should be produced without limit, and without any pattern, since this is a random system. If randomness is true, randomness must be present everywhere, right now. Science ignores all such considerations. Shut up and calculate. Remember, only anti-intellectuals, not looking for certainty and not looking for authentic explanations, are attracted to science. There are no intellectual scientists, not one. Science is an empirical and pragmatic subject, not a rational and coherent subject. Intelligibility is not required in science. Explanation is not required in science. "I feign no hypotheses," said Isaac Newton. In opposition to his great rival Leibniz, he saw no reason to attempt explanations, whereas Leibniz was obsessed with them. Newton remains the archetype of the scientist, a total anti-intellectual matching mathematical formulae to observational patterns. Of course, Newton was also a deranged alchemist and religious fanatic who believed himself a prophet of God. Science tries never to mention those aspects of its supreme hero. Newton almost certainly suffered from Asperger's syndrome. In preference to grounding science in undefined and inexplicable randomness, some scientists prefer to ground temporal and contingent science in temporal and contingent science, i.e., they advocate a system of infinite regress, turtles all the way down, with no starting point, no eternal and necessary foundations, just one temporal and contingent universe after another, forever. Again, infinite regress satisfies science's ideological compulsion never to refer to God, cosmic consciousness, metaphysics or ontological mathematics. Like randomness, infinite regress has no possible explanation. The only thing that can ground the temporal and contingent is the eternal and necessary, but that's exactly what science must always avoid, since God, cosmic consciousness, metaphysics or ontological mathematics is then implied as the explanation of existence rather than science, so infinite regress, an endlessly repeating temporal and contingent system with no base state, no first cause, no first term of the series, is highly attractive to scientists in their obsessive pursuit of non-explanation. Explanation of existence appears to be an affront to the scientific mind. Scientists are sensing, perceiving types. They hate thinking and judgment. They hate reaching a definite conclusion. They are incapable of it. Infinite regress is a linear way of avoiding an explanation. Scientists have also come up with a parallel, as opposed to linear, infinity, for providing total non-explanation, the good old multiverse, the ultimate violation of Occam's razor and the principle of sufficient reason. Rather than attempt to explain anything, the multiverse gang say that anything not forbidden is compulsory, without stating what would constitute forbidden, hence it's a formally meaningless criterion, and that these compulsory things happen across an infinite collection of universes. Anything that can happen will happen, maybe not in this universe, but in some universe. So, if it isn't going on here, it's going on somewhere else. Nothing has to be explained because, whatever it is, it's bound to happen somewhere, sometime. Not for any actual reason, you understand, but merely because it's possible, and the multiverse covers every possibility, without limit. The multiverse gang who really go for it can entertain both a parallel and linear multiverse, i.e., infinite universes horizontally and infinite universes vertically, an infinite regress of multiverses. As ever, the prime directive is never to arrive at any intelligible foundation, because this is invariably linked to God, and science must under no circumstances invoke God, whether a religious, spiritual, philosophical or mathematical God. ABG, anything but God. Randomness, chance, accident, a causation, infinite regress, uncertainty, indeterminism, the multiverse, you name it, all are to be preferred to God. Science is also ideologically compelled to repudiate the analytic, tautological, in favor of the synthetic, non-tautological. With the analytic, you can work things out purely using definitions, reason and logic. With the synthetic, you can't. You have to observe and hypothesize and work with correspondence rather than coherence, parts rather than wholes, bottom-up particulars rather than top-down universals, induction rather than deduction, the a posteriori, based on experience, rather than the a priori, based on reason and logic. Matters of facts are always to be chosen over relations of ideas, truths of fact are always to be chosen over truths of reason, the perceptual is always to be chosen over the conceptual. There is no need to aim for completeness and consistency. Do you see that all the tools that allow us to think our way to a rational, logical foundation, definition and explanation of intelligible existence are all systematically, dogmatically cut out of the equation by science? Science is all about the senses, perceiving, not reason and logic, conceiving, and that's why it's foundationally anti-intellectual and unintelligible, irrational and illogical. Science is empirical, not rational. Bizarrely, close to 100% of scientists fallaciously believe that empirical means rational, even though it's the formal opposite. You can't expect these anti-intellectuals to understand basic philosophical terms. Descartes, the great rationalist philosopher, realized that the only way to the truth was to doubt everything that could be doubted and to rely only on those things that are absolutely certain, and to build up everything from there. This is an analytic a priori procedure. This is the exact procedure used by ontological mathematics. This procedure is repudiated by science, which relies entirely on what people observe, even though people use their limited, unreliable, fallible delusional senses to observe, and, as Descartes pointed out, sensory evidence is the essence of what can be instantly doubted. Scientists obviously never studied Descartes or his brilliant rationalist successor Leibniz. Scientists loathe rationalism, even as they proclaim themselves the great champions of reason and logic. You couldn't make it up. It's so bizarre that sensing, perceiving types have confused themselves with thinking, judging types. The latter would never make such a fundamental error. A note to all scientists: you can't be on the side of reason and logic if you reject reason and logic as the means of explaining existence. You believe that the observations of the delusional human senses are the root of explaining existence. They're not. No thinking person would ever imagine they were. We think our way to the answer to existence, just as Descartes said. We don't observe our way there. No one can observe what came before the Big Bang, no one can observe the eternal and necessary, or the mind, or thoughts, or the processes of free will, or the essence of life, or the unconscious, or consciousness, or subjectivity, or the source of all. But reason and logic can work out how to explain all of these things. That's what ontological mathematics is all about.